Welcome. In this tutorial, we're going to look at iMovie 2011. We're going to capture video from a camera. We're going to import video from a previously existing file. We'll look at the user interface. We'll import still images, audio files. We'll do some editing, and then we'll export it out into a finished product. So let's start with the user interface. Right here, this black area to the top right, this is your viewer window. Up here to the top left is your project library. Right now it's empty. I don't have any projects. We'll create one momentarily. Down here we have our event library. Now events are one way that iMovie likes to categorize the video that you bring into the movie making environment. So I guess the first step that we'd like to take a look at is how to get some video into iMovie. Now I'm using a FireWire adapter from a mini DV camera into the computer, and I plugged the FireWire cables into my computer, into the camera, and once I turn the camera on, iMovie will now detect that I have a camera attached to it. And when it detects that there is a camera, it will automatically pop open this capture window. Now notice it says ready to record. I was in video mode. Now I'm in play mode, which for my camera is the mode where I can play video back. Currently it's in the stopped position, and what I have here is a blue screen. I have some play options down here, and I'm going to just click rewind. Rewind to the beginning of my tape. Notice I'm getting time code here up in the upper left corner, and now it's at the beginning of my tape. When I click play, note that now I'm able to take a look at the video footage that's on my tape. So right now I've just clicked play, and I'm not importing this video. So when I'm in this mode, I have the capability using this interface to scrub through the content that's on my tape. And now I have some footage on this tape, and now I can just push the fast forward button here. And what I'm interested in capturing is this footage of my hens here. So I'll get it sort of set up. I'm going to click stop. That'll stop my tape. It's pretty much set to start capturing. I'm going to click play. And this time I'm going to click this import button, and once I do that, it gives me the option to create a new event. Now remember, this is how we categorize our video footage within the iMovie library. So I'm going to say 2012-03, and I'll call it hens. Now the program can detect the date that your video was originally shot, and this is assuming that the date and time are correct on the camera. The camera I'm shooting on, the date's set at 2008, so all of this footage is going to be categorized into a 2008 year because I didn't set the date and time previously. So learn from my mistake. Be sure that your date and time is set correctly before you shoot. If not, then you'll be able to differentiate the captured material by the name of the event that you create. I'm going to go ahead. I have it named. You can decide to split by days, meaning that if the camera sees that you have two different shots that were shot on different days, it'll split those up for you. Or you can uncheck it, and now everything that I've shot will now be put into this event, which is 2012-03 hens. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go ahead and click import. Now I get this up here that says I'm importing, and this is the video that I'm capturing now into iMovie. So basically what I'm showing you is a way to manually capture the footage off of the tape or the camera that you shot and bringing it into the iMovie environment. When I say manual, what I mean is we're capturing it real time. There's no way to speed it up. So I'm just going to watch the footage as it comes in, And notice now the clip of my hens is done. I'm going to go ahead and click stop, and what that will do, you saw a little sign that it was generating thumbnails. That little bit of footage, maybe a minute, is now in my library. So what I'm going to do is click on the red dot here and close this window, which is my capture window. And here we go. Remember I said that the date and time wasn't set on this camera, so it's set at 2008. And there it is. There's my event, 2012-03 hens. If I take a look, now I have this footage, and when I scroll over the top of it, I can see up here in my viewfinder the footage that I'm looking at. Now note, when I say playhead, I mean this little red line right here by my cursor. I can set that line anywhere on this clip and just click, and now if I click my space bar, I'll just let it roll and I can watch it in real time. And so if I unclick my spacebar, now I can scrub through it again. Now when I clicked, it also gave me this little yellow binding box, and what that is a selector tool. I can grab on the edge of that selection box. I can scrub it back to the beginning of my clip. I could pull it wider, and note that it gives me some seconds there. So right now it's at 16 seconds. I have 16 seconds of footage selected. This is the way that iMovie helps us to select chunks of video footage. Now, what's going on here is this clip, or actually there are two clips, because we've got this whole clip of the hens, and then at this point right down here it clips over, and now you see the pond. What it does is iMovie tries to identify on the tape that it is importing where one shot stops and another begins, and then it tries to break those into clips for you so that you don't have to go through and manually do those clips. It will break it into clips for you. It's relatively useful, and I find that the algorithm is relatively spot on. Now before we get into projects, because once again I'd like for you to realize that we're still in the library. It's called the event library down here. We've just imported one event, which was this clip of the hens. This is not in any sort of project, meaning that we can't export this into a finished product at this point. We need to create a project that we can edit. We'll get into that in a moment. Let's finish with capturing. Now we've imported one clip. Let's take a look at how we manually jump in and import another clip. And what we are interested in when your camera is plugged in and turned on is this icon right here. My camera is plugged in, turned on, so when I click this icon, it opens up that capture window for me again, and now I'm able to take a look at some more footage on my tape. So I'm going to click play. It jumps right back into the footage of the pond. And I think what I have, here we go, is some footage of my geese. I'm going to just go ahead and click import, and I'll grab, when I click import, now I have different options. I have an existing event, which is called 2012-03 hens. So I can either add it to the existing event so that I can find it in the library with the existing event that I've already created, or I can create my new event. And I'll call this 2012-03 geese. And I don't have the split days into new events. I'm just going to click import. And once again, we'll just import a few, a minute or so of the geese. What's useful while you're importing is that you're able to view the time code up here in the upper right of the screen, and that enables you to sort of determine how long you've been capturing and also at what point specifically on the tape you're at, just in case you want to use that as an indicator. Say you're creating a log and logging what's on your tape for future reference, use this time code. That's the best way to get around the videotape. Now we've got some footage of the geese. I'm going to go ahead and click stop, and it will import. Once I'm done importing from my camera, I can go ahead and click up here in the red dot again, close my import window. Once I've closed my import window, now I have my two events in the library, the geese and the hens. Right now the geese are selected. I can go ahead and scrub through that. I can go ahead and scrub through the footage of the geese, start to take a look at what I have. Once again, I can just hit the space bar and that'll play it in real time. So now I have access to those two events that I've created. One the footage of the hens and one the footage of the geese. So that's about it for capturing video from the video camera. And once again, we can access that capture option using this capture icon right here, the camera icon. Your camera does need to be turned on and connected to the computer using a FireWire. Now the next step is to import some external video. If you have a camera with a hard drive, if you're using video from a source that somebody's given you, an AVI or an MPEG file that now you would like to use in your project, the way that you're going to get that file into iMovie now is to import a video file. So we go up to the very top of the screen and you have an option to you click File and then Import, and just go ahead and click Import Movies. And I have a file right here. This is from the archive, an instructional video about poultry from 1937. It's an MPEG format. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And notice once again I can add that to an existing event within my event library down here, or I can create a new event. And I'm going to create a new event and I'm going to call it import, and we'll call it poultry. We have a couple of options. You can copy the file in, which means it'll make a new version of the file, and if you do that, you can choose this option, which is to optimize the video. You can copy it in a large scale version or the original size. If your video is smaller than this 960 by 540, be sure to click the original size if you want to do the optimize video option. I'm not going to select that. Instead, I'm going to just move the file as it lives now, and basically move the file from the folder that I'm calling it from and move that right into my iMovie environment. I'm going to click import. Now this file I believe is 230 megabytes, around there. So I'm going to click import and it will start processing. Let's wait and see, and it'll give us an idea of how long it's going to take to import. So once again, roughly 250 megabytes. It's going to take me about 10 minutes to bring into my environment. Now I've finished importing the external MPEG file that I found on the archive.org, and it imported into that event that I created, import poultry. I have in 2008 the two events that I imported from my camera. So I have my external file, the two files that I imported from my camera. These live and breathe in the event library. The way that iMovie works is that you will now have access to all of this footage no matter what project you're working on. And now's the time for us to create an individual project for our class assignment. When you log in, you might have a default project set up for you that's called My First Project. That's great, and if you want to utilize that, go ahead, or you can drag that into the trash and get rid of it. But when it's time to create a new project, you can just go down to this button right here. Once you've clicked Add a New Project, you're given this menu here, and it lets you add a number of themes. You have a photo album theme, say it's your family trip or comic books. There's a number of themes available, movie trailers. You can give your video sort of a templated look and feel. Right now, I'm going to make sure that I have no theme clicked. Over here, I have the option to add a name. I'm going to name mine OLIT 522 project. I'm going to give it an aspect ratio of 4:3 because that's what I shot, the camera that I shot the footage with, and also the footage that I have found on the archive from 1937 is also shot at a 4:3 aspect ratio. Frame rate of 30 frames per second is correct, and I'm not going to add this automatically add cross dissolve. I'm going to go ahead and click create, and now I have my project OLIT 522. If I click this arrow right here at the top, it takes me back, and if I have multiple projects, then I can see all of my projects in the project library. I can select one. I know it's selected because it's blue, and then I click edit project and it takes me over into my project timeline. Now that I've created my project, the next step is to get clips that I'm interested in using out of my event library where they are stored for use, and then put them into the project so that I can start to edit chunks together. First, I'm going to go to this import poultry, this video from 1937, and I'm going to find just the right segment.
Very early in the morning, the rooster sends out his call, and the chickens begin to wake.
Now I'm going to grab that first section, which is that very early in the morning. So I'm going to just go ahead and double click on this clip. Note I have my event library. I'm in my event library. I have my event selected, and what I see down here is the timeline for that specific event. So I can start by grabbing a clip by just clicking on it. Oops, that's too much. I'm just going to click once. No. Way too much. So let's see. If I click on it just once, it gives me the smaller binding box, and that is roughly how I want to select my clips. So I can grab the front end of this binding box and grab the beginning of the clip. Now I can pull it out. And now I'll take a look at that clip that I just grabbed.
Very early in the morning, the rooster sends out his call, and the chickens begin to wake.
Okay, so that's the segment I want. So I've been able to select just the clip that I would like to pull onto my video timeline. Now I'm going to click down on it, and everything that's in this yellow binding box is now going to be pulled up into my project timeline. And I'll just go ahead and drop it there. And now notice that I'm getting a similar looking timeline as I have down here for my event. The difference is that this is my project. This is what I'm going to be editing. I can add effects, I can add transitions, I can add credits and text. So up here is the timeline that we're going to be working in for the project. Once again, down here in this area is the footage that is in its raw format that is in the library itself. So let's take a look at our clip.
Very early in the morning, the rooster sends out his call, and the chickens begin to wake.
I'm going to jump to the next clip that I'd like to grab, which is an image of the farmer letting the chickens out of the coop. Okay, so I know I want to grab a selection right in here, and I can scrub through it and get the approximate. So I'm going to click maybe right here. Notice that the thumbnail starts. I can see the difference between the farmer here, the chickens here. Let's see. So I'll click, and I get that selection box, and I'm just gonna hold my mouse down and select just the portion that I'd like. And notice that what happened was my selection box, that little yellow binding box, was on up here, and then it jumped down to the next row, and so somewhat linearly I can move across time. It's just I have multiple rows that I have to contend with, which is a switch from the old interface in iMovie, yet still pretty navigable. It is nice that you get these thumbnails so you can see what's happening in the video clip over time. So I have this selection of the farmer opening the coop door. Now I'm going to grab it since it's selected by the yellow binding box, and once again I'm going to pull that right up into the project, and now I have two clips right together. Let's take a look.
Very early in the morning, the rooster sends out his call, and the chickens begin to wake. Brown, bringing grain for the chickens. He opens the door and scatters the grain about.
Now the clip here is a little shorter than I'd like it, and I'll just select that, delete it, and we'll try again. I think I'm going to have to start somewhere a little earlier, and I'll start my binding box here. So notice where my timeline is through my clips. In the viewer, I see it transitions over here to this farm door. That's where I'm going to start my selection. So I click. Now I'll pull my selection out across the rows. And I'll just select that much. So what happened was the clip that I selected had gotten cut. The audio that I wanted was cut a little bit, so I deleted it, and now I reselected that clip, and now I'll pull that up into the timeline. And so I'll take a look, just starting right at that, right where the clip starts.
Here comes Farmer Brown, bringing grain for the chickens. He opens the door and scatters the grain about.
Great, and that's the audio that I wanted. So what I've done is I've grabbed a couple of clips out of this full video file that I imported, and I've pulled these up into my timeline, and now what I have are two clips arranged on the timeline. And now I'm going to jump down in the event library to a shot of my own hens, and let's see, I'll just start right here at the beginning. I'll click down, and I'll throw 5 or 6 seconds of my own hens just by clicking, using that selection box by dragging it. Once I have the amount selected, now I can drag that right up into my project library. And if we start at the beginning, we get the full piece.
Very early in the morning, the rooster sends out his call, and the chickens begin to wake. Here comes Farmer Brown, bringing grain for the chickens. He opens the door and scatters the grain about.
Now, I know, kind of silly, has to do with chickens, but what I'm trying to get across here is that I brought in a couple of different sources. The old instructional video, which is talking about farms, and then some video footage that I shot, and I brought those separate clips, 3 separate clips, into my project, and now what I've done is I've arranged them in the order that I want them. The rooster waking up, the farmer opening up the door, now chickens in the chicken yard, and I can just keep adding clips here in my project to start to create the collage, the effect of clip to clip to clip. Now right now we're looking at rough jump cuts from one clip to the next clip, and we'll get into adding transitions and kind of softening up the effect But what we're doing right here is the bulk work of editing, which is figuring out what clips we want, putting them into the timeline, and then seeing what the mosaic of one clip after another, how that looks to us in the viewer. And so we'll go back and possibly we'll delete a clip, we'll replace it with another clip, we'll add a few seconds here or there. But really arranging those clips into your project timeline, that's the key piece to editing. Let's add one more piece from the poultry, and I believe it's at, let's take a look and see if we can see it here in these thumbnails. Here it is down here. The farmer closes the door at the end of the day. Okay, so I'm going to click and start selecting here. And just grab that piece of footage that I'm interested in, which is the farmer closing the door at the end of the day. And I'll drag that up to my project. And now we have 4 clips to work with. We've looked at one way to select video, which is to go right on into your event library, find the clip that you're interested in, clicking, get in your yellow selection box, and then trying to give your best guesstimation to what the clip that you're interested in. And then you can pull that up. Then you can pull that right on up into your project timeline. But once you've pulled a clip up into your timeline, you can do some much finer editing. It's always nice to give yourself a wider range of selection when you're choosing a clip. Give yourself 2 or 3 seconds at the beginning, 2 or 3 seconds at the end. That way you can get just the spot that you're looking for before you drag that right on up into your timeline. Once it's in the timeline of your project, you can click on a clip, say this one for example, and note I have this slider here. I can increase the view of the clip itself, specifically the timeline. And so this is a 17-second clip. It starts out with these little chicks, and then it moves. It goes through this fade. It fades in to these hens here. And that's the point where I want it to cut in, where it says it's early evening. Now, what I'm interested in is clipping off the first 3 or 4 seconds of this clip, because I don't need it. I don't need that shot of the little chicks. So I have when I select the clip, I get this yellow selection box, and now I can grab my selection box, and this is roughly the section that I want to cut out. So I've got my yellow selection box selecting the part that I want to cut out. Now I can go ahead and click delete, or go up to edit and hit delete. And basically what I've done is I've trimmed off the section that I don't want on that clip. So let me go ahead and put my timeline, or excuse me, my playhead.
It is early evening.
And I've trimmed my shot. I can do the same thing, on the end of my shot. I've got this shot of these geese here, and if I don't want it, I can go ahead and select the portion that I don't want and go ahead and trim that right off. So in this way, we select rough approximations of the size of the clip that we want to put onto our timeline. We drag that into our project, and then we go in and you can kind of zoom in on the clips in your project timeline. You can select the area that you don't want to keep, and then go up to edit, and then just delete the selection. The next step is to add a still image to our timeline. In iMovie, we can access photos that we have stored in our iPhoto library, and that's often the easiest way. So over here towards the right hand side, we have a number of icons, and the camera icon will let us access photos within our iPhoto directory. So I will expand this and scroll down a little bit. Now I've created an album within iPhoto that's called Video Assets. And when I click on that, there's a single image here that I uploaded, and it's called eggs. So I'm going to grab this photo of eggs, and I'm just going to pull it right up and drag it onto the timeline. And notice that right here, when I scroll over the top of this video clip, it tells me that it's 4 seconds long, and 4 seconds is the default for images. So when I take a look, now notice when I add an image to my timeline, let me put my playhead there at the beginning again, and I'll click play. Notice over here in the video viewer that I get this slow fade out effect. iMovie calls that the Ken Burns effect. Ken Burns perfected that, of course, during the Civil War documentary back in the late 80s, early 90s. That's automatically added to still images when you add it to iMovie. And in just a minute, we'll talk about how to use other effects or take the Ken Burns effect away. But once again, I just want to show you that you can grab an image from your iPhoto library and just drag it onto the timeline. You could grab an image from your desktop and just drag it onto the timeline as well. But if you organize your images using iPhoto, I think that's probably the easiest way when using iMovie. You can collapse the menu by clicking on the icon again. There we go. Now we get our clips. So what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4 video clips, 1 still image. Let me show you. You can click on this image, expand it out a little bit. You can double click on this image, and you can change the duration manually. Let's say we want it to be 5 seconds long. You have the option to choose a number of effects, and as you roll over them, you can take a look in the viewer, see what the different effects are. If you double click it, it will apply your effect. You can click cancel. That'll cancel your effect out. When you're ready, you can click done, and it should apply. Now if I take a look, now my image is 5 seconds long. This little icon right here indicates that the clip has cropping, rotation, or Ken Burns effect. So if I double click on it, over here I see that I can do things such as rotate my image. I can click on this to start and stop the Ken Burns effect. I can adjust fitting, cropping, etc. When I'm done, I just click done. Great. So that's how you add a still image to the timeline. In essence, it's basically just like a video clip. And note that when I click on this little cog wheel, I have an editor that I can edit visual levels, precision timing, etc. Clip adjustments, video adjustments, and once again another way to access that, cropping, Ken Burns, etc. And in essence, all of our video clips have this same editor, clip trimmer, the capability to do video adjustments and audio adjustments. Now that I have my 4 video clips that are roughly the length that I would like them to be, as well as my still image, let's take a look at adding transitions. Right now, the way that they're set up, we're going to have a rough cut in between each of these clips. But first, before we do that, my video viewer here got shrunk down a little bit. Let me just click on the edge and see if I can, there we go, manipulate it, pull it down a little bit. I don't need to see that full event library down at the bottom. Now I can see my images over here a little larger scale. And we can play with images in the project, and I can view it a little better in my viewer. So if I put my timeline sort of the end of one clip, let's take a look at the transition between one clip to the other, this rough cut.
And the chickens begin to wake. Here comes Farmer Brown.
So it just jumps from one to the other. Let's take a look at some different transition options by clicking on the transition menu here. Maybe I'll pull that back just a little bit by clicking down and dragging. And here we go. When I click to this transition button, I get this nice transition menu that opens up, and I have a number of options to choose from. Let's look at a very simple cross dissolve between one clip to another. Now notice when I roll over the top of this thumbnail here that says cross dissolve, it gives me an idea of what that transition is going to look like. Let's go down here and take a look at the page curl. So it gives me an idea of what that transition is going to look like. Let me grab that cross dissolve, click on it, and just pull it up in between my two tracks, or excuse me, my two clips. When I roll my cursor over this transition, note that it says currently 0.5 seconds. I have some settings that I can, if I click transition adjustment, I can adjust the duration, overlap range, etc. So I can click done, and let me now go back over here and just put my playhead in that clip, click my space bar.
Begin to wake. Here comes Farmer Brown.
And now I have a little bit of a cleaner transition between the two, just a quick cross dissolve. And I find that a cross dissolve or a fade really is one of the more useful transitions. I generally am not using some of the flashier transitions, for example, like a mosaic. But let's take a look at something like what something like a mosaic would look like. So if I put that right here and I click play, let's take a look at this mosaic transition. You know, it has a certain feeling, but that's not the feeling that I'm looking for here. So you can play with transitions by adding them in between your clips, and if you don't like it, just go ahead and click on it, click delete, and that'll take your transition away. I think probably what I'll do is just add some cross dissolves between each of my clips. I like the cross dissolve effect, and there you go. So go ahead and play with some of these transitions if you like, and once again we can click on that and increase the transition timing if you like. I think a 0.5 second transition in this instance looks fine. Let's look at it one more time.
The grain about. It is early evening.
So there, the transition basically just creates a little bit of a gentler movement from one clip to the other, especially if you use something like a cross dissolve. Once you're done adding your transitions, go ahead and click this icon which popped open the transition menu, and it'll just shrink right there in your browser. The next thing we're going to add are text titles. And I also want to add audio, but I want to add my text titles first. That way I get a better understanding of the length of my project, and then I'll add the audio right over the top at the very last. So the option to add text is this option right here, show or hide title browser. So I'll click on that, and what I get are some different templates for text that then I can put right over the top of a piece of video or over black, say at the beginning. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab this first one here, which is just centered text, and I'm going to click right on that, and I have the capability to add it to a piece of video. And notice when I'm over the top of a piece of video it turns blue. I know that if I let go of my mouse here, it's going to just drop it right on top of that piece of video. But what I want to do is I'm going to actually put it right in front of that clip and add the title right before the clip starts. So I'm going to drop it here, and I'm going to choose, I just want to have that title right over the top of a black, so I'm going to click black, and they're added right here. Notice that it's 4 seconds long, which is it's just black, 4 seconds long. It does a quick fade in at the beginning, and I have the option to click on, say, my clip adjustments, and this little window, drop down menu, clip adjustments. I can change the duration. Say if I want to have it longer than 4 seconds, I can change that and click done. I could change that background. Notice right now that it just has title text here. To actually customize the text, I'm going to double click on this blue bar right at the top, and that will open an editor and let me then edit my duration, my fade in, fade out time, and I can come over here into the viewer, and I can add my text, which is please feel free to title your video anything you like. Once I've added this text, I can select it all. I can go to the font. I can change my font, so I'll go to Helvetica. I could also add, bold, italicized, change the alignment, etc. So let's choose Helvetica, and I'll say done. Once I'm done adding my text, I can go ahead and click done. And let's take a look at the full effect. My playhead's right at the beginning. It fades in. It fades out, and it jumps right into the clip. Now, I don't really like that transition of just jumping right into the clip. So I think what I'll do is I'll go up here to my transitions, and I'll grab one more cross dissolve, and I'll just put it right between that first title and the rooster crow. And take a look now. It just makes it a little softer when there's that cross dissolve between the black and the first clip. So by using the transition theme, the title themes, I'm just able to grab templated text and add that directly to my timeline. So I grabbed the centered one and dropped it by itself onto the timeline. That way I could choose a black background, and it would just start out from black. Let's take a look at, let's see, at the end I can choose scrolling credits, and when I roll over I get an idea of what the action's going to be. I can grab this scrolling credits template, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this right over the top of my still image, and note that it will make it the full length of that image. And what it does is it puts that text right over the top, and it will show right over the image. So if I look at a demo, there you go. Try that again. Great. So I'm going to double click on this little blue bar, which lets me know that that's where there is text applied to this image or this piece of video. It opens up my inspector, and now I can edit this text right here. I'm going to delete this, what was put in there as demo text. I already have some text ready to go for both the song that I used and the image that I used for attribution. And so I copied that, and I'll just paste this in here. Once again, I can select all my text, and I could do show fonts, and I could change the fonts, etc. I'm not going to do that right now, but I will add one more line that says credits. So with the scrolling template, I have a lot of text that you can't see sort of below the fold, and over time it will scroll so that you can see the whole thing. I've added my text to my scrolling credits. I think I'm just going to click done and done. And let me take a look here.
Gander watches over his family on their nest in the barn.
Okay, two things there. I saw that I have a little bit extra footage that I would like to cut out of this clip right here. Let's see, let's take a look. Right there, I think I should cut that out. So I'm going to go in here, and this is where the editing comes in with your video. So I'm going to take this transition out because I don't really feel like I need that at the second. And let's address this clip. So in essence, right around here, right before that fade happens, is where I want to cut. So I'm gonna pull my selection bar right over, and I'll find right where that fade starts to begin, maybe right before. And what I have is this area selected right here. That is the area that I want to cut out. So I'm going to go ahead and click delete, and that shortened to my clip.
Farmer Brown closes the chicken house door.
And now I will go to my transition menu. I'll grab my cross dissolve, and I'll throw that back on here. Now I noticed that my credits are pretty quick. Let's take a look.
Farmer Brown closes the chicken house door.
A little too fast to read in my opinion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on my still image. Now the duration of this is 3.5. I'm going to increase that to say 7, and I'll click done. Now it's 7 seconds, and let's double click and see, and it also applied that duration to my credits. So now let me take a look and see if that slowed it down a little bit. I'll put my playhead and click the spacebar.
House door.
There we go. That slows it down just a little bit. Great, and I think at the very end I would like to have this fade to black. So now I'm going to go to the transition menu, or it's already open, and I'll take a look down here, and here's a transition right here that fades to black. So I will just put that right over the top and take a final look.
House door.
Great. It's starting to shape up. We have our pieces of video edited together. We've added a still image, a number of transitions, cross dissolves between each of these clips. We've added some titling at the beginning, a bit of credit titling at the end with a fade to black. This pretty much fulfills almost all of the requirements for the assignment, except for bringing in audio from an external source. So let's bring that audio in. I'm going to open up my folder. Well, actually here, let me show you this way first. Let me close the transition menu. We have a musical note icon here, and if I open that up, what it does is it gives me access to my audio programs such as iTunes. So in the same way that I moved an image in from iPhoto, I could also grab a piece of music from my iTunes and just drag it right here into my project. But since we did that last time with the image, let's look at the alternate way, which would be to open up just a folder where you have your assets saved, and you could add your asset by just dragging and dropping it. For example, this audio, I can just drag and drop it and apply it right here to my project. Currently, this audio track is applied to the whole piece because our video is only 45 seconds long and the MP3 file is over 3 minutes long. And so what it does is it just overlays, it puts the MP3 right at the beginning of the track, and it then overlays it for the length of your whole project. That's not the effect that I'm looking for right now, and also the volume's a little too loud. If we take a listen. The music's louder than the vocal narration on the video, so I don't want the narration to interrupt, or excuse me, the music to overpower the narration on the video. So the way that I'm going to handle this is to trim down the audio so that the audio only plays during the intro credits and the end credits. So the first thing I do is go up to the little cogwheel icon for the audio file and click on that and click Clip Trimmer. And when I do that, I now see the whole clip. Audio clip, and notice that as I scroll, it shows me where on my timeline up here at the top, the playhead, I am, so I can start to figure out how much audio I need to trim off, and it looks like nearly the whole thing. So I'm going to go down here and grab the end of my clip and just start trimming right on up. And where'd the end go? I need to keep bringing it up and just pulling it right on up. Notice that now I'm somewhere around 50 seconds, 30 seconds, 11 seconds. And what I'm going to do is have the audio end somewhere right around that end of the transition. So note that now I have just this section selected in between the two yellow bars, and it denotes that right here in on my file. Or excuse me, in the timeline, it shows me that that's where the music is applied. So let's take a listen. Once I have the audio section that I want to apply to my project trimmed just to the length that I want it, and I can denote that by seeing that this audio is just the length of this one clip, and it's going to end right here at this transition. My last step in the clip trimmer is to go over and click Done. Once I click Done, it's applied, and now I only have this audio applied just to this clip here. So I'll take a listen. Great. Let me jump up here into my clip adjustments. I'll click on audio, and I'm going to turn my volume down, say maybe to about 50%. I'm also going to fade out, and I'm going to have that fade out last, say, about a half second. So you can adjust your volume, you can have your audio fade in, fade out, and you can do some custom equalization and normalization if you would like to take it to the next level as far as mixing your audio. I'm going to click Done here, and now take a listen.
Very early in the morning, the rooster sends out his call.
Okay, so I have my little title credit, a little bit of audio, and it just fades right into my video. Now I'm going to add audio to this end clip, and I'll do the same thing. I'll open up my assets folder and grab that MP3, and I want to just put it right at the beginning of where I want that audio to play, which is actually, let's say roughly at the beginning of this clip. I drop it right onto the clip, and notice now that since I applied it to the clip instead of the whole project, it gives me the 6 seconds that are left in my project on the timeline. So let me grab the clip adjustments. I'll click audio. I'm going to turn my volume back down to about 50 so it's equalized to where the rest of the volume was. Put it at 51, that's good enough. And I'm going to have a fade out, and I'm going to make the fade out last, let's say, about a second during that fade to black. And because I just applied the audio to a clip instead of the whole thing, I don't need to use that clip trimmer like I did previously, the clip trimmer. It's already trimmed out for me. So I'll just click done. And let me take a look here at the end of the project.
Farmer Brown closes the chicken house door.
Okay, our video is shaping up pretty good. We have a number of video clips and a still image. We have some titles, transitions, and some external audio that we've put over the top of the intro and the outro, sort of as a soundtrack. We're pretty much have fulfilled all the requirements of the assignment. Let me show you a couple of other quick editing tricks before we go. Note that I can stick my playhead in my timeline, and I can right click or control click right on the clip. I get a number of options, and I can go ahead and say split the clip, and what it's going to do is split the clip right at the playhead. And notice now that I have two pieces of video, so instead of having to grab a hold of it and dragging and sizing the clip doing that way, you can just put the clip right where you want to cut, control click, and then click split clip, and it'll cut your clip for you. Then you can grab the chunks that you don't want, and you can just get rid of those. And notice that my transition still applies.
It is early evening.
So once again, control click, you can use the trim or split clip options. That's pretty handy when you're editing. One other thing I want to show you is that you can add a number of different effects and feeling to your video clips. So let me, this is the video that I shot. It's in color, whereas the video from the 30s is in black and white. Let me double click on my clip. When I do that, the inspector pops up, and when I look at my clip, I can edit things like duration. We've already looked at that. Notice that you can slow the speed or increase the speed. So if you wanted to do a slow motion, or if you wanted to do a quick time lapse, you can increase and decrease the speed. That's always fun to play with. You even have the option to reverse the direction of the clip, so that's kind of interesting, being able to play your clip backwards. But let's notice here that we can add both effects to the audio and the video layer of the clip. Let's go ahead and click video effect, and when I do that, I get a number of effects that right now you can see that none is applied. When I roll over, I can start to get the in the viewer there, I get an idea of what will happen if I apply an effect. Here's a nice one of vignette, kind of darkens the corners. But what I'm looking for specifically, I can go down here to black and white, and I'll just click on black and white, and I'll click done. And now when I play my clip, let's see if it applied it. Yep. Now my clip is black and white. Maybe it keeps the same tone as the older video clip. But what I wanted to show you is that you have the capability to control look and feel of your clip using that inspector. So you can go ahead and double click on it, and there's that video inspector that you can play with effects. You could always go and click none and take that effect right out of there. So I'm going to click cancel. I'll leave it black and white, And I think in general, I'm pretty happy with the way that this short video turned out. Um, we've cobbled together a mosaic of clips and other elements for a piece. Of course, we're not finished yet. Right now, the audio project is still inside of the the video project is still inside of our video editor in iMovie. You need to get it out into a file format that you can then upload to YouTube. With iMovie, you have a number of options to export. Go ahead and go up to the Share menu at the top of your screen, and I'll click on Share. And you'll notice down here I can export a movie, and when I click Export Movie, it gives me a number of options right here within iMovie, and I can export it out. Right now, the large version will export a file that is 720 by 540 pixels, and so I can go ahead and click export. Now, depending on the original size of your footage, these options will become available, the 1080p widescreen or the 720p widescreen. But right now I'm working in a 4:3 television aspect ratio, so the large version is going to go out as 720 by 540. I'm going to go ahead and just dump that right onto my desktop. I'm going to name my file export number 1, and we're going to remember that that is the option where I chose share and export movie, and I chose the large option. I'm going to remind you that because we're also going to do another kind of export, but let's take a look at this one first. Export 1, this is the 720 by 540, and I'll click export, and this will probably take a moment. Great, and now that export is finished, let's take a look at the desktop and get the information on these files. This is the file that we just exported. It's an M4V. Now, M4V is a Mac proprietary version of MPEG-4. You can upload M4Vs into YouTube, so that works. 16.7 megabytes for about a minute long piece. Let me double click on this and I'll open it up with QuickTime. There we go. Now we can take a look.
Very early in the morning, the rooster sends out his call, and the chickens begin to wake. Here comes Farmer Brown, bringing grain for the chickens. He opens the door and scatters the grain about.
So you get the idea. This version, the M4V, is a pretty good option when you're exporting out of iMovie. Once again, we got to that by going to Share, Export Movie. Let's look at this other option, which is to export using QuickTime. Now, if we export using QuickTime, we have a few more options, particularly the kind of file, the file extension that we can export as. Now, this is the way that you want to export if you're particularly trying to export to an MPEG-4. I think an MPEG-4 is the best option for exporting out to, and the reason I think it's the best is it works within all different video editors. It works within YouTube. If you share this file with other folks, they'll be able to play it on their computer. Whereas the M4V is a Mac proprietary file format. It's not as ubiquitous. It's like a WMV for Windows. It'll play within a Mac or a Windows environment, but it's not easily traded back and forth. So I like to choose an MPEG-4. Notice that when I click on this menu, there's a bunch of different options that I can choose. Specifically an AVI, which is uncompressed, like we talked about in class. So if you're looking for an uncompressed version of your movie, this is a good way to go. But let's choose Movie to MPEG-4. And when I do that, now I'm going to go to my options here. And I get a number of options, particularly the video format's going to be MPEG-4. The image size is going to be 768 by 576. That's the original image size. So I'm just going to keep that as it is. I don't want to bump it up bigger than the original video that came in. Once again, that would pixelate my video, so I'm just going to leave that. Frame rate, it's a good idea to keep that current, and a keyframe every 24 frames. That works especially if you're going to work using the web. Now the piece here is that the higher the data rate, the better quality of the file you're going to have. 1000K is pretty good. 2000K is going to be even better. Let's put it at 2000K. And the audio is going to be 120 kilobits per second MP3 basic audio, which is pretty much industry standard for video. So I'm going to leave the settings like this with 200K bit stream, and I'm going to click OK. I'm going to call this export to, and it's going to be saved as an MP4 this time, MPEG-4. And now I will click save. The file is now done downloading, so let's take a look. Open that up and look at the desktop. Let's look at the MP4, and it is 11 megabytes compared to that M4V, which was 16 megabytes. So a little bit smaller size, but roughly equivalent for our basically 1 minute of video. Let's double click on this and open it up with the QuickTime player. And it's going to have a roughly similar look and feel.
Very early in the morning, the rooster sends out his call, and the chickens begin to wake. Here comes Farmer Brown, bringing grain for the chickens. He opens the door and scatters the grain about.
Okay, I'm going to click stop here. And we have roughly equivalent 2 exported files, an M4V and an MP4. And once again, with the MP4, you can play a little bit more by using export, using QuickTime, clicking the options setting. You could increase the data rate specifically to try for a higher quality file if you feel like it's pixelating. I would suggest exporting to MP4 and using that to upload to YouTube. But if you want to try using the M4V by going to the share option and export using QuickTime, or excuse me, you go to share and just export movie using this option, you can give that a try too. Either way, you have exported your final video project out to your desktop, so now you have a finished file of your video that you can watch on your own computer, and for the final deliverable for our assignment, you can upload that to YouTube so that we'll be able to share that during our class film festival. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next tutorial. Thanks.